Kino gathered up her determination and stood up, then faced Suzuki Satoru. Her lack of hesitation gave Suzuki Satoru the chills. Surely most people would waver for a moment or be disturbed, would they not? Was it an undead trait too? As he was contemplating that question, Kino cast her spell. A brace of magic arrows lanced out at him with the same special effects as in Yggdrasil. And then they vanished in the instant they touched Suzuki Satoru's body. Kino exclaimed in surprise. Suzuki Satoru no Manga possessed an ability known as high-tier magic immunity. It was a power that nullified all spells of the 6th tier and below. While it was in effect, a mere 1st-tier spell was completely useless. It seems the power that protects me is functioning without any problems. Now then, try again. This time, I will lower my defenses. He deactivated the passive skill. For some reason he felt like he was naked under the barrel of a gun. A guild member had once said that he felt afraid to have a gun pointed at him, even when he had implanted subdermal bulletproof fibers. He could understand how they felt now. While the powerful emotions of the undead would be suppressed, it would seem emotions that did not reach that threshold would be left untouched. I understand, Kino said, and once again, she cast her spell at him without a moment's hesitation. Magic arrow. The bolts of light lanced out again and struck Satoru dead center. It did not hurt. No, there was something that might have been pain, but actually calling it pain would have disgraced the word. Were his senses dulled because he was undead? But when he thought about it, he wanted to scoff at how a body made solely of bones without flesh, nerves, or even skin, could feel pain in the first place. On that note, how the hell did a body without vocal cords or lungs even manage to speak? It was the same way for Kino, who did not breathe. That was just how things worked, and he had no choice but to accept them. He peeked at her, and in the end, Kino's face even after attacking Suzuki Satoru twice was calm. Rather, her expression seemed to say that she had expected this all along. What's with her? How could she attack her helper, Suzuki Satoru, with no hesitation whatsoever? Was it because she was a psychopath, or because she was undead, or was this just the way this world worked? Countless possibilities swept through his mind. Don't tell me, she felt that it was a chance to kill me. Or no, was it because she was thinking, if you die, that's all there is to you, something ruthless like that. The matter of whether he was strong enough to be her collaborator must have been very important to Kino. That was why she could attack him with no hesitation whatsoever. Still, I am an ally of hers, so I figured a bit of hesitation ought to be expected, oh well. No amount of thinking would give him an answer. He would just have to regard her as a creepy little girl for now. He could not allow himself to be taken in by her youthful appearance and pretty face. She was a girl who had something dangerous inside her. In any case, he now knew that engaging in combat without performing more experiments was a very dangerous thing. If this world was different from Yggdrasil and death was a final ending, then he needed to know what it felt like to take damage, to be in pain. A fear of pain in battle might lead to him losing a fight that he could have won. Kino-san, you said you could use 2nd tier spells in the past, but what about now? Is the 2nd tier still your best? Yes. I focused on broadening my knowledge rather than improving my spellcasting abilities, so... I see. That means... While Kino's level and ability scores were unknown, no matter how she tried to attack with the 2nd tier spells that she knew, she would not be able to cause him any pain, compared to the attack spells employed by his foe, estimated to be on the level of an overlord. She was completely useless for that purpose. In that case, I apologize, but I still wish to continue my tests. I need to use attack spells centered on myself. Therefore, can you tell me if there are any open areas where doing so will be relatively safe? Suzuki Satoru's own spells ought to be able to do some degree of damage to him. In addition, there was one thing he had to clarify. That was to see if friendly fire was in effect. His fighting style would change depending on whether the answer was yes or no. Things like how to use area of effect spells and so on. An open space, you say. How big does it have to be? The biggest space I know of in the sewers is, yes, around 50 meters across. 50 meters, huh? He would have to avoid spells with area of effect knockback and spells which were exceptionally effective against walls and other objects. Only then would such a size be considered adequate. It would have been wiser to teleport outside the city and carry out his tests. However, he had not expected the situation to end up like this, so he had not memorized any teleport destinations outside the city. In Yggdrasil, one would leave a marker, but in this world it would seem one memorized the location instead. What was the state of the inside of his head after knowing this? Speaking of which, did he even have a brain in this body? As he began contemplating this digression, Satoru shook his head and banished this useless topic from his mind before answering Kino. I see. Could you take me there? The place he had been taken to was indeed quite spacious. It was probably a central collection tank for sewage flowing through the main trunk and branch sewer lines. However, it was empty now, save for marks left over from decades ago. He activated his ability to check for the presence of zombies. It would be troublesome if there were zombie rats or the like around. If they got killed during the experiment, he might end up aggroing all the zombies in the city. Incidentally, there were no such things as slime zombies. While every race could be turned into zombies or skeletons, there were certain exceptions. Races without a skeletal system could not be zombified or skeletonized. That was how it worked in Yggdrasil, and after checking with Kino, that was how it worked in this world too. After finishing his checks, he stole a glance at Kino, who had remained in a higher place. She showed no signs of fleeing. Was it because she trusted him, or because she felt she was useful, or because she felt that there was no point in escaping? Let's begin, then. Call Greater Thunder. This 9th tier spell was the highest tiered single target lightning spell. While a flame type spell would have worked just as well, he was mildly afraid of fire. It was one of his weaknesses, after all, which was why he had chosen this spell instead. Of course, he could have used something weaker, like a 5th tier spell or something, but he had chosen a high tier spell, because he wanted to know how much damage a 9th tier spell would do to him, as well as how much it would hurt. Also, this was one of the spells that an Overlord would commonly use, and he also wanted to see if he could direct single target spells against himself. A thick pillar of lightning coursed down, illuminating the interior of the sewer with a dazzling light. And then while he felt pain, Suzuki Satoru also realized that this pain was not unendurable. His sense of pain seemed to be suppressed as well. Was it an effect of being converted into an undead being too? Suzuki Satoru could not help but laugh. While gaining an undead body had shocked Suzuki Satoru a little, it was because he had such a body that he could bring forth his full abilities. If he still had his fleshy body that could feel pain normally, surely Suzuki Satoru would have feared battle more, and he might even have chosen to avoid fighting. Following that, Suzuki Satoru took out a scroll from his inventory. He had to check if he could use scrolls normally. He unleashed the power contained within the scroll, and scorching flames charged skywards. It was Napalm. There was a heaven-splitting stroke of thunder. It was followed by a sky-scorching blaze. A wave of excitement and fear washed over Kino Fazversenvern. The words magic caster or undead were no longer sufficient to describe this. This was a power that only a being superior to both of them could employ. In other words, this magic was of the gods, or similar beings, Kino fervently believed. The Invern royal family followed the Nobel faith that had believers in the surrounding countries. It was a pantheon headed by the sun god Banyala, who held a gem in his hand, and the moon goddess Lucanus, who wielded a jeweled staff. Ultimately, however, it was not a belief born of an inner devotion, but because it was the state religion. People other than the Rainbow-eyed lived in this country too, and the Nobel faith, as the state religion, was used to strengthen the bonds between the various ethnicities. One could even go further and say that they were using religion to establish ties to the surrounding nations. Back then, Kino had been young and did not know these things, so she had believed in the gods with all her heart. However, on that day, and every day that followed, the gods had not reached out to save them. Therefore, Kino no longer believed in the gods. However, the power of the gods was a different matter. The existence of divine magic casters proved the existence of the gods' powers. Therefore, Kino had done research to borrow, seize, or steal the power of the gods, in order to try and restore everyone to normal. However, nothing she tried had any effect. Perhaps she was not talented in that field, and so she had halted her research into the topic. After abandoning that research and years of work, as she was returning the books she had borrowed from a temple, Kino witnessed an undead being entering the city. It was a skeletal undead, without so much as a scrap of flesh on its body, and both the robe it wore and the magic staff it held looked like powerful magic items. It radiated an aura of might found only among the strong, and it seemed to be more powerful than Kino's father. Kino immediately fled with several books in hand. After reaching a safe place, she began to regret what she had done. Should she not have tried to negotiate and seek salvation for her people? Her regret had not faded since that day. Surely it wouldn't be too late to try now, wouldn't it? More than once, that thought had made her chest feel like it was going to burst. But then, today had come. In that moment, when she saw the figure floating in the night sky, Kino had fled once again. Even from a distance, she could tell his stately robes were brimming with magical power. And then, those clothes that could not possibly have been made by human hands were dwarfed by that golden staff. His sheer presence blew away the bitter regret and determination in her heart, until nothing remained. Kino believed that he, Suzuki Satoru, commanded overwhelming might. Therefore, when he had asked her to cast a spell, she had done so without any hesitation. She believed that her puny spells could not possibly harm him in the slightest, and indeed, that had been the case. Father, mother, Nastasha. There might be a way to save everyone after all. Kino's time until now had been wasted. She had studied all manner of magical grimoires and conducted research, making full use of her unsleeping body to further her learning. While it had been self-taught, she ought to have possessed more knowledge than the average magic caster. Perhaps Kino Fazversenvern would not have been able to save everyone by herself, no matter how hard she worked in this city. But if that great man could save everyone, then as the sole surviving member of this kingdom's royalty, she would accede to any request he made, even if it meant destroying herself. Still, I don't think I have anything worthy of offering to him. Did he ask for knowledge because he pitied me? I don't understand. All I can do is believe. Kino Faz her Sinvern bet everything she had on that powerful undead being. She did not know if this would end in triumph or tragedy, or if this would become a heroic saga never before seen in the world. In any case, a new chapter had begun in Kino's story.